My name is Scarlett. I'm 32 years old and work as a freelance jewelry designer. My life sounds glamorous from the outside, working with international brands, attending parties, wearing beautiful clothes, but the truth is, it's all part of my job. Behind the sparkle, I'm constantly working, planning, designing, and negotiating. My husband Anthony, who's the same age as me, used to have a stable job before he decided to quit and help manage my growing business. Together, we've built something special, but it hasn't come without problems, especially when it comes to Anthony's mother, Isabella. Isabella lives alone in the house Anthony grew up in. She often assumes we live in luxury and are rolling in money. She constantly asks us for things, dresses, bags, money for parties, and believes that attending events with company executives is the same as going out for fun. What she doesn't see is the stress behind those smiles and outfits. One day, after returning from a week-long business trip overseas, I got a call from Isabella. She sounded excited and mentioned something about the $20,000 I had saved up. I was confused. I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm a freelancer. I do have emergency savings in the bank, but I don't keep that kind of cash at home. My bank card was with me the whole time, and I never authorized any large withdrawals. Then Isabella casually told me she had taken the money from the sideboard drawer in our house. She assumed we were rich and thought it was okay to use it. I was stunned. I didn't remember ever putting that money there. I thanked her for letting me know, but I was still trying to figure out where the $20,000 even came from. A few days later, when Anthony returned home from his overseas errands, the mystery was finally solved. It turned out Anthony had withdrawn that cash himself for an urgent business payment. He didn't want it in our bank account because he was planning to use it to settle some of Isabella's hidden debts quietly. After we had limited her credit card spending, she had secretly borrowed money from different lenders and opened new credit lines behind our backs. When Anthony found out, he took her cards and decided to repay the debts in cash to avoid any more financial mess showing up in our records. But instead of waiting for him to handle it, Isabella took the money and spent it on herself, including expensive souvenirs from her own trip abroad. When she returned, she proudly called me to thank me for the gift and said she had a great time with the money. I couldn't believe it. I told her that taking money from our home without asking was not only wrong, it was theft, even if she was family. But Isabella didn't seem to understand. She shrugged it off and said, "You two live so lavishly, so what's the problem if I take a little for myself? Think of it as helping your mother." It wasn't the first time she acted entitled. Anthony and I had been dealing with this for a while. To stop her from constantly asking for money, Anthony had once opened a credit card in her name, but she overspent wildly, buying dresses, bags, and even an expensive ring without asking. The bills were so high that Anthony had no choice but to put a spending limit on the card. Isabella, of course, wasn't happy about it. She stormed into our house one day, shouting that it wasn't fair and demanding to know why she couldn't enjoy life the way we did. We tried to explain again that our lifestyle wasn't what it looked like. It was work. Product launches and business dinners were not vacations, but she just wouldn't listen. Things got a little quiet after the card limit was set. She still dropped by now and then to complain, but nothing too dramatic, until the end of the year. That's when a well-known foreign brand contacted me about a business expansion overseas. It was a dream opportunity, and both Anthony and I were excited. It meant leveling up our career, and maybe, just maybe, building a better life together abroad. But we knew Isabella would be an issue. We discussed it for days before finally telling her our plans one weekend. Just as expected, Isabella didn't take the news well. She insisted we were trying to abandon her and go live an even more luxurious life abroad. Anthony patiently explained that it was for work, not pleasure. We promised her we'd come back once things settled, but she refused to believe us. She accused us of wanting to leave her behind and live carefree. Anthony, completely worn out from trying to explain, finally said, "Let's just pay for a trip for her, a week-long vacation, that way she won't feel left out." I wasn't sure it would help, but I agreed. Anthony promised to pay for her flight and hotel himself. But peace didn't last long. A few days later, while Anthony was busy with overseas arrangements, Isabella showed up again. "Anthony said you'd give me some money to shop over there too," she said. I asked her about the credit card, and she admitted Anthony had taken it back to avoid trouble with currency exchange rates. I explained that I couldn't give her money without Anthony's approval. She left angrily, raising her voice. Later, she went on a 7-day international trip, fully paid for by Anthony. When she came back, the situation got worse. She called me again. excitedly sharing what a great time she'd had. Then she casually mentioned that she had overspent again, on souvenirs. That's when she brought up the $20,000 again, insisting it was the money I had saved up for her. At that moment, I realized how far gone things were. Esabella truly believed that our success belonged to her too, that she had a right to it, and what's worse, she had no idea how much damage she had caused. Later, I found out from Anthony that she had also sold her own house to pay off her debts, but even that wasn't enough. Her spending had gone so out of control that even selling the land and the house couldn't fully cover what she owed. She was now living in a small, cheap apartment and working part-time to try to pay off what remained. It was hard to feel sorry for her, knowing she had done this to herself, but I did feel something, a strange mix of sadness, sympathy, and relief. Anthony didn't say much, but I knew it hurt him. Losing your childhood home because of your own mother's choices, that pain doesn't fade easily. Still, we had to move on. Our new life overseas was just beginning, and I had to stay focused. More brands were reaching out to collaborate. My business was growing fast, and I barely had time to rest. Anthony was also handling more work than ever. We were grateful, busy, and finally free to move forward. But even as we packed up and looked toward the future, a part of me couldn't forget the weight we left behind. A one-week trip, and everything that followed. When Anthony offered to pay for Esabella's week-long overseas trip, she lit up with surprise. "Really? Are you sure?" she asked, half smiling but already imagining the possibilities. Anthony promised to cover her flights and hotel costs. At the time, it felt like a fair way to give her a break while we focused on our move abroad. Unfortunately, the peace didn't last. Just a few days later, while Anthony was busy arranging our business transition overseas, Esabella showed up at our house again. "Anthony said you'd take care of the trip," she said, "but I also want to do some shopping while I'm there. Can you give me some money?" I asked her what had happened to the credit card Anthony had set up for her. She admitted that he had taken it back because he was worried she might overspend again, especially with fluctuating foreign currency rates. I told her gently that I couldn't give her any money without Anthony's approval. That didn't sit well with her. She left in a huff, raising her voice and complaining as she walked out. Despite that moment, Esabella went on the 7-day trip over the New Year holiday. When she returned, she called me, excited and talkative, raving about how much fun she'd had. But then she casually dropped a bomb. "I overspent a little on souvenirs," she said with a laugh, "but it's okay because I used the money you saved for me." I froze. "What money?" I asked, confused. "You know, the $20,000 from your drawer." It took me a moment to process what she was saying. We never kept that kind of cash in the house, ever. I had business savings in the bank for emergencies, but there was no way she could have withdrawn that, and I certainly never left $20,000 lying around in a drawer. "That money wasn't meant for you," I said, trying to stay calm. "You can't just take money from our home without asking. That's not okay, family or not." But Esabella didn't seem bothered. "I'm just telling you now that I used it," she replied with no hint of guilt. I told her bluntly that taking money without permission was theft, and that even if she believed it was justified, it wasn't. Her tone changed. "Oh, come on, you and Anthony live such an extravagant life," she said. "I only wanted a little piece of that. I'm your mother. Isn't it the same as doing something kind for your parent?" Her words stunned me. The entitlement, the way she casually justified what she had done, as if our success somehow made it okay for her to help herself. Still reeling, I promised to ask Anthony about it when he got home. When he returned that night, I asked about the drawer and the missing $20,000. He looked serious. "I took it out of the bank about 10 days ago," he said, "to pay off some debts your mother had secretly racked up." Apparently, after we limited her credit card spending, Esabella had quietly taken out loans and applied for new credit cards, without telling us. When Anthony found out, he was shocked. He took all her cards and decided to deal with the debt in cash to avoid drawing attention from our business partners or affecting our company's financial image. He planned to repay each lender individually, quietly, and without a paper trail. But before he could finish handling everything, Esabella found the cash and used it for her vacation instead. "She used the money meant to pay off her debts," I said slowly, still trying to absorb it all. Anthony looked tired. "Yeah," he muttered, "she blew her last chance." We had tried to help. Even giving her that trip felt like a farewell gift, a final gesture before our big move. We couldn't keep caring for her like before once we were overseas. But Esabella didn't see it that way. A few days later, I started getting non-stop calls from her, sometimes over 80 in a single day. Anthony told me to ignore her. It's just more drama, he said, but her persistence wore me down. I finally picked up one day, and her voice was shaky, almost like she was crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know you're busy with the move, but I'm in trouble. I'm getting calls every day, bills, letters, people asking for money. Anthony won't answer my calls anymore. Please help me. You're my only hope now." It shocked me to hear this. Anthony had always been patient with her. For him to cut her off entirely meant things had truly gone too far. I didn't know what to say. If Anthony had used the cash to pay her debts like he planned, maybe this wouldn't be happening. But instead, she had taken the money for herself, and now, she was facing the full weight of her financial decisions. Collection letters from finance companies, calls from lenders, unpaid bills. It was like something out of a soap opera. I told Anthony about the call, expecting him to soften, but he didn't. "She wasted her chance," he said simply. "Let her deal with it now." And so I did what he did. I blocked her number. I didn't feel good about it, but I also knew I couldn't force Anthony to take responsibility for her mistakes forever. As moving day grew closer, I tried to stay focused. Our house was still messy with packing boxes, but I kept going, determined not to let this distraction pull me down again. Later, I found out that Esabella had ended up selling her house to cover what she owed, but it wasn't enough. Even after selling the land and her home, she still couldn't pay off all the debt. The total amount she had borrowed was shocking. I couldn't believe how deep she had gotten. Anthony's childhood home, the place he grew up in, was gone. He didn't say much about it, but I could see the sadness in his eyes. Losing the place where your memories live, not to time or change, but to your own mother's mistakes, that's a kind of pain you can't easily describe. Esabella had moved into a tiny, low-rent apartment and was working part-time to repay what remained. She was older now, and I couldn't imagine how difficult it must be for her to keep a job at her age. Part of me felt sorry for her. She was still Anthony's mother, but at the same time, she had created this situation herself. Actions have consequences, no matter how old you are. Our move overseas went smoothly, and soon enough, business began to flourish. We started receiving more collaboration offers than we could handle. Some came from companies I never imagined would reach out to me. It was exciting, exhausting, and overwhelming all at once. I barely had time to rest, and Anthony was just as busy with meetings, translations, scheduling, and managing production timelines. We were doing well, but as I looked out over the skyline of the city we now called home, I thought about everything we had left behind. Children were still a dream for the future, one I barely had time to think about these days. But even with all the success, the memory of what happened with Esabella stayed with me. Not because I regretted it, but because it reminded me that even the people closest to us can make choices we can't undo for them. And sometimes, letting go is the only way forward.